this is what it means to believe. And she came and she said, oh, what was that verse you read? He said, believe in all things are possible to him to believe us. She said, I can believe. I can believe. I can have assurance that he's saving my life right now, that if I choose to worship him, he'll accept me. And so at that point, my mom became a true believer. It wasn't fear-based conversion. She fell in love with God. And every chance she got to share her testimony, she shared it. And when I was like this, it would make my skin crawl and make me want to leave the room. That's the power of the testimony, right? We'll overcome by the leave the room because I was so full of demons. And my mom was so desperate for me to have salvation. She would try to talk to me about it all the time. Imagine your son going like this. She trained up her child in the way he should go, and he's like this. And she's blaming herself. What did I do? And so every time she had a chance to talk to me, though, she could tell it pushed me away. And so her prayers changed. She started praying intercessory prayer, and she said, Lord, he's not going to receive it from me. I'm just his mom. He thinks I'm old-fashioned. You send somebody that he's going to listen to. You send somebody that he looks up to that's going to encourage him and lead him to you. Don't you dare let my son die and not make it into the kingdom. And on Sabbath, we're going to talk about intercessory prayer. It's a real thing. And I'm so thankful for my mom, because I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for her. You know, I'd try to mess around with this stuff. I'd go ghost hunting in graveyards and never see anything. I'd put my hands on a Ouija board and never move. I think those are the prayers of my mom, because I've heard so many. I've seen it work with other people, but I didn't see anything that intrigued me. I didn't see anything that made me believe it was true. And I believe if God wouldn't have stopped that, I would have went full force into that stuff. But I was a truth seeker. I was looking for truth, and I just couldn't seem to find it. And the chain of events happened, and my parents were getting a divorce. Unfortunately, they're remarried now, praise God. But they were getting a divorce, and my cousin, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, drove 5 hours to help us move because he had a pickup truck. So he's helping me and my dad pack up. And as we're packing, I hear my mom sharing her testimony with him, and then I hear him sharing his testimony with my mom. I'm like, whoa, this is my older cousin, my cool cousin that I looked up to. And he wasn't a Christian last I talked to him. And now he's sharing his testimony. And I have to tell you, I reached a rock bottom at this point. I mean, this was a hopeless, empty road. I was plagued every day with the thought of, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is this like? What am I doing here? I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be faced with all these decisions. Who will you serve? Your whole eternity depends on it. And I was like, if there's nothing after this, if I just die and that's it, what is the point of this thing? It doesn't matter if I'm the biggest rock star, the next rocket scientist, or a jailbird my entire life. If the ultimate end of this reality is just death, what's the point? And so I escaped every day through drugs and alcohol and just following the lust of my flesh, because I was like, look, I got one life to live. Let's live it up. I'm just going to do everything that feels good or whatever until I rot in the ground. No hope. That's hopeless, man. And so I was at that point, and God has perfect timing. He knows how to meet you where you're at. He knows how to touch you in a personal way that is totally different than anybody else. Just the people in here, I look around, there's so many people, but imagine on a worldwide scale, God, we serve a personal God, so personal. I end up in this, it's not a book full of crusty rules. He said, it has the answers to life. He said, I read it and miracles happen all around me. He said, and this is what I mean by he tries to reach you where you're at. He knew where I was at. And he said, it's kind of like that magic stuff you're into. I read it and miracles happen. Now, the Bible is not a magic book, but he was reaching me where I was. And it was enough to inspire me. You know what? When he said, don't judge God by all the hypocrites that represented him, that really spoke to me, because when I looked like this, I was judged all the time. I lived in South Georgia, surrounded by rednecks, proud rednecks. They called themselves rednecks. So they would ask me if I fell in a tackle box and all kinds of stuff. But as he said this, I was like, you know what? And I hate judgment. When my friends' parents didn't want them hanging out with me, I'd say, what, are they judging me? You know, the parents would finally meet me and they'd say, you're nothing like I thought you'd be. And I'd say, what'd you think I was going to be like? Were you judging me? See, I had this big thing about judgment, and now I realized that I was judgmental towards God. I knew nothing about God except what I heard spewed from behind a pulpit or from a hypocritical Christian, and I would use those things to try and justify not believing. I would hang on, I would cling to these things to justify not believing. I think so many people do that today. You can show them the Bible is true and prophecy is real, and they'll try to hold on to this one thing. And usually it's about the character of God. Usually it's the topic comes up that, well, he burns people forever and ever, and it's not even true. And so when we got to Chattanooga, Tennessee, to move there, I ended up living with his sister, my cousin's sister, and me and my dad were staying there temporarily until we could get on our feet. And I just began to read the Bible. And I started with Genesis. And I said, God, if you're real, reveal yourself to me in this word like you did my cousin. I said, he has no reason to lie to me, but you have to show me something in here. And I started praying a specific prayer. And I wanted a job at Hot Topic. Has anybody ever heard of Hot Topic? Okay. So it's basically a job where you can look like this and work there. There's no uniform. This is how people look. And it's in the mall. And so we were temporarily living with my cousins until we could get on our feet. And I put in an application, didn't hear anything back. So I Xeroxed it 10 times, and every day was turning in the application and calling them because people were saying, you got to be persistent and all this stuff. And my dad got a job. And then I actually walked out of 3 different job interviews because at some point they told me, you know, you can't wear all that stuff in your face, right? And I said, oh, I didn't know you discriminated against people with piercings, and I'd walk out. So I thought I was like taking a stand. I was going to pioneer the way for the future or whatever. But it came to a point where my cousins said they had a sit down talk with me, and they said,